Executive Director.
Scott Hayward.
Can I just ask the?
Yeah. I am Matt from Concord TV.
I'm Scott Hayward. This is my wife Julie. We only manage 2 buildings at Colin Dairy.
I'm John Jarvis with Senator Shaheen staff.
I'm Jordan Turtle-Wysocki. I'm a local musician and band leader.
Hi, I'm Ethan Mullaney. I'm the producing artistic director of the Weather Band here in Whitefield.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm Michelle Bennett from Senator Shaheen state staff. And on the screen, Jenny.
Sound.
Jenny, the director of the New Hampshire State Council on the Arts.
Thank you. And as you can see, we have someone from WMUR, I think. Well, they are on right now. And Lisa? Not sure who that is either.
Yes, Lisa with New Hampshire Business Review. Hi.
Good. It's nice to be able to see you. And Alan is with my office. Is that you, Alan, or is that Sarah? Whoever you are, you're muted. But trust me, whoever that is, they're with us. Okay.
Yes, that's me.
So thank you all very much for taking, there's Alan, for taking time to join me to talk about how we're going to retain the creative economy in New Hampshire and all of the wonderful venues that you all represent and the entertainers that you represent here. You know, I remember back when I was governor, getting the first report on the creative economy in New Hampshire and how impressive it was to see the economic contributions that our theaters, our entertainment venues, our artists provide to the state. And it's not just critical in terms of the economy, but to the quality of life that we all enjoy in New Hampshire. And as I think about what makes this such a wonderful place to live, it is the fact that we have access to all of this entertainment, these venues, the people who, like Jordan, who spend their lives developing their talents so we can all enjoy them. So it has been very distressing to see the impact of COVID on all of you folks and so many other people, and to think about what we could do to provide some help. As Nikki says, the PPP program has been generally helpful to small businesses, and most of your small businesses, but as we know, that's run out. We're trying to get a second round, but it's not clear what will happen there. There's also some legislation that you're probably aware of, Save Our Stages Act, which would be very helpful if we could pass it. There is also legislation to provide for tax credits for venues that have sales that they have to refund. And there is legislation to provide charitable expanded deduction for charitable contributions, which I'm hopeful we got a little bit done in the CARES Act, and hopefully we might be able to get this done as we're putting together another package of legislation. But right now we don't have any real agreement that we're going to go forward with an additional round of legislation. We've had the majority leader in the Senate has refused to take up the House package and didn't take up the Senate package until the end of July. And so we are here at this point without any guarantee that something will happen. That's why I really wanted to talk to all of you, because the more I know about your situation and what will happen if we don't respond, the better I can advocate that we've got to do this, because if we don't, this is going to be an impact on so many people. So again, thank you all for coming. I'm really am interested in hearing your situation, what you expect to happen, and if you don't get any help, what you think may happen. And I don't know, Tim, do you want to go first and just sort of give a general what you're seeing from business? And,
Sure, thank you, Senator. You know, when the lights went out in March, everything shut down. This was a ghost town, and after years of a thriving town that you had a lot to do with helping us fund. expanded outdoor dining has really helped bring back at least some sense of more vibrancy in the downtown. But I think Concord for the past 10 or 15 years has benefited hugely from live performance venues like Capitol Center for the Arts, Bank of New Hampshire Stage, Red River Theater, City Auditorium, Concord Community Music School, and that has really had a lot to do with driving our downtown economy. It's bringing a lot of people in, spending nights, eating in the restaurants, shopping in the stores. So there's a ripple effect. And I consider this, live performance venues among the absolute most vulnerable right now. I mean, they can't make the numbers work. And if these organizations fail, it's going to have a ripple effect on a lot of other businesses in this community, and I suspect on the seacoast and elsewhere. So I think it's really critical that we are able to come to some sort of agreement in terms of how we can extend additional help for performance venues, and also how can, is it time to start lifting some of the restrictions little by little? There's been some really good news in New Hampshire. I don't want to see that go in the wrong direction.
No,
But we seem to be heading in a good direction right now, and let's hope that continues.
anyone want to talk about your personal situation and what you see happening?
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. We are located in a really, really rural county, which definitely is another impediment. I'm new in the position. This is only my third season as producing artistic director, and one of the missions, my personal missions for the organization is accessibility, improving the quality of life for the residents of Coast County. And so when something like this happens, while we are incredibly fortunate to have started to develop some relationships with some sponsors and starting to get money that allows for greater accessibility, this sort of just cuts that off completely. And we did get a PPE, we did get from a grant from the NERF, and that's a great help, but that represents less than half of what we actually ended up losing. And we spent our summer trying to innovate. We did some live streaming performances, which were really well received and really helped sort of keep the name out there, but it doesn't come anywhere near making the numbers that it takes even for us as a nonprofit to continue to move forward. And the scary part about that is that next year, a lot of our subscribers and the people who have already purchased tickets, they turn those into vouchers that they can use in future seasons, which is great, but that's no income coming in next year. And that is really, that's a scary thing. We know we're going to retain them. We know that when we get to the other side of this, they'll come through the doors again. But it's going to be a while until we can actually generate income from them, especially because the demographics of our county are just very specific.
And I assume you have not done any live performances this summer.
We started inviting small socially distanced audiences in the second week of August. This is 12 people maybe in our 266-seat theater. We just last week were the first theater in the country approved by our actors union to have indoor performances. It was a huge sort of a long time in the collaboration and the negotiation. And we'll open next week, September 9th, we're capping it at 25%, which is what we agreed to with the union. So again, that's about 60 seats, which is better. This season was the first season we ever planned to do a fall. We usually just do July and August. That was something that was planned for. Also, just by coincidence, we happened to put in a brand new HVAC system that cost us $90,000 that was planned pre-pandemic, and so that's a scary proposition as well. But luckily, that was sort of the game changer because now we have, top of the lines for air purification capabilities. So.
Okay, so what's your first production going to be?
We'll shop before next Wednesday, yeah.
And we're all invited up.
Yeah, of course. Come on down. We've got 60 seats to fill. So.
Good. Well, the point you make that I'm sure everybody can echo is that when you lose the revenues this year, you're expected to operate for a whole year and a half, really, basically, until you can start making money again. not a lot of businesses can survive that.
Right.
Jordan, you wanna talk about it from a
Sure.
creative point of view?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a fiddle player. I've got my own trio, and I work with a number of other bands as well. Primarily here in New Hampshire, I've been performing here since I was a kid. I actually, when I was a lot younger, I performed at two of Shaheen's gubernatorial inaugurations.
All right, yes, very good. We were very good.
As Nikki mentioned during the tour, one of our biggest shows of the year was going to be our St. Patrick's Day extravaganza right here in this room, on this stage, on March 14th. And as you all recall, March 14th was the day that the plug got pulled, and so that did not end up happening. That kicked off, at first we thought it was only going to be a few weeks of complete cancellations. We had at that point probably 6-7 shows a week booked through the March season. All of that evaporated immediately. And then, it started to get scarier and scarier as we moved forward through the months. And I wake up every morning with a stomachache, knowing that as soon as I check my email, there was just going to be a list of venues very apologetically saying the same thing. We're so sorry, we have to cancel the show. And what that translates to is you're not going to make any money. This is my line with it. On a good year, I make about 25% of my income through teaching, private fiddle lessons. The rest of it is all through performing. Basically, to make a long and kind of curricular story short, at this point, even after factoring in a lot of different types of aid, and I'm very grateful to have been able to take advantage of the PPP loan and a number of other options. I've sort of combined to try to piece things together and pay my mortgage. At this point, given even with all of the shows that we were still able to do, outdoor shows, private parties, socially distant things, by the end of this year, I'm anticipating that I'm going to be at about 25 to 30% less household income than I was last year. And this is a year when I've been lucky, my career's been on the rise. I anticipate making significantly more than I made last year. So obviously that's bad, right? That's scary. 25 to 30% income, decrease is enough to frighten anybody, I think. But I also just wanted to point out that I think for a couple of reasons, I'm actually in a better position than a lot of my fellow musicians. One of those reasons is that I am able to teach remotely. Not all of my students want to learn an instrument through a laptop, but several of them have continued, so there is some income continuing there. And also, we don't really do the bar and pub scene anymore, and that's the bread and butter for a lot of musicians. Instead, we sort of replace those gigs with weddings and private events. Most of which have been canceled or postponed. However, a number of them have still happened one way or another, and so we are still able to make some money, especially during formal months, by doing that. And so factoring that in, that puts me in a position where I think I'm actually a bit luckier than a lot of my fellow players. And I'm still at 25 to 30% less income this year. So I think that if you were to try to extrapolate from that, the position that other positions are in general is probably even worse.
So, transitioning from your luck statement, we closed on March 15th for 2 months. We used our kitchen to do a commissary meals program. We got a lot of donations, and we just converted those to food and gave them to nonprofits. But obviously, that's not a sustainable model. When the state allowed drive-in movies to start, we opened the drive-in music menu. We seat 75 cars, and also because we have 2 businesses, one is our food and beverage business, we were allowed to open an outdoor restaurant. So we basically opened an outdoor restaurant with a side view of the stage, and then we opened the front of the parking lot too. And yesterday we did our 83rd show. We've been busy. We've been busier than we've ever been. Typically we do 160 shows a year. We just did half of that in 3 months. But it's ending quickly. We get into September. It's never been a big month for us. So and now we've been so busy running the venue and doing the shows and getting people to play it that it's been kind of okay. Let's just make as much money as we can for as long as we can. And now we're thinking about the winter. We're running out of people to book. There aren't really. Just the outdoor venue. I'm starting to do the same people over and over again. We're trying to get through middle of October. We've been really lucky because we've had one rain out, which was last Saturday. So unlike 99% of the promoters in the country, we're actually making money. I think we were after 2 weeks. Once we were able to open the restaurant tent, we brought back all of our employees, so we have 38 people on staff. But we're losing money off of it. But we're people are getting paid. So between the drive-in and the food and beverage, we're going to make a little bit of money this summer, but we're not depleting our savings. So we're just kind of leveling off, making a little bit of money. My concern going forward, starting in October, is we're all in this business. It's like a three-legged stool, and we need it all to be stable. One of them is we need to be open at a capacity that we can make money off of it. I mean, I can't. I'm not a nonprofit. I can't open my venue and have 70 people. It just doesn't make any sense. I lose money faster than I'm closed. And the other is we need people to come out and play inside. We've been looking at that. We've been looking at different models to do that, and we might be able to get people to come in on. Our idea is some sort of a situation where they come in and they do a show on Friday, 2 shows on Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. So then rather than having to get all these different artists, we put someone in there, and if we can do 5 shows at 100 people, it's 500 people, and it doesn't pay my bills, but it pays my staff. But the other thing we need, the other stool, is we need people to come out and buy tickets. We haven't dipped our toe into that yet. I'm watching everybody else. We literally yesterday just took an indoor show that we were going to move or we're going to cancel, and we said, okay, we're going to move it indoors on November 21st. So we can hold, I believe, 130 people of our 700. And if we were to do 2 shows in a day, and we're not paying the artists as much as we could have do it, but you get to a point where you don't want to take advantage of people either. So it's very much a dance. We're going to do that, and then we're doing a Christmas show with a local guy, Gary Hovey, and he's lost his horse, so we're going to do a stream show, and then now that we're going to try to sell a show out and see if we can, and if we can, we'll sell another one and do a whole weekend if we can. But our business is different, unlike any others, because if you own a restaurant and you're able to put $1 million away, that's food. That's people come. There's no advanced reservations. We exist on advanced reservations, and what's going to kill our industry is if a venue has $1 million in advanced sales, and they're chipping away at that they've already been chipping away at it, right? They get to a point where there's no advanced sales. They don't have the money to pay the artists. They don't have, they've lost everything. They don't have the money to operate. So what's happening now is venues are using all their advanced ticket sales, which is what you desperately need before you can't spend that money. And if they can open, and if they can get payments, they won't have money to pay payments. They won't have money to pay the staff. They won't have money to pay the bills. Like, they're gonna burn through all of their money. And that's not like having a savings account if you're a restaurant owner. That's not your money, it's a liability. And that's what's happening to people burning through the liability. Like, that's what scares me. Because you can't do that for very long. And that's where everybody is. And that's why NIVA is saying that 90% of the venues, the independent ones, are going to go out of business by the end of October, because they just, once they burn through that money that they're not supposed to be touching, there's no recovering from that. We got PPP money, and it really helped because we were running our kitchen and we were paying our staff. We have 8 full-timers and we were paying everybody. I haven't got paid since March, but we're paying our staff. And one problem that every venue runs into is, we do 160 shows a year, about 80,000 people. I want to keep my production manager. He's fantastic. I want to keep my box office person. I want to keep my chef. I want to keep my.
Everybody can identify with this, right?
So we have a $4 million a year business that runs like this. But if I have to watch my whole staff and start over again, that's a bigger nightmare than if I just quit. These people know what they're doing. I'm working in that area. I can't do their job too. So our fallback, what we're discussing is how much money will it take for us to keep our my beverage manager, my chef, all the people that I manage, all these people that if everybody else fell apart and I could open tomorrow, who do I need with me? These are the people that I need with me, And it's like $500,000 of cash to get through 6 months and just pay my bills and keep these people. Starting over, once you get to a certain level, you can't just start over and rehire on a venue, this size or my size or at your big room. I just can't,
So do either the Encores Act or the Save Our Stages Act, do either of those help you?
So I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about a lot of things. Tax benefits don't help me. PPP at this point doesn't help a venue because that's doing is it's making us pay unemployment. The Sarah Stages Act is the thing that would get us through. We're allowed to get away because we own the building. So I have a great responsibility, relationship with my bank, which is Enterprise, and the president calls me and says, "How you doing?" And I said, "We're doing well this summer, so I want to start paying my mortgage again." So he's like, "All right, we'll pay you for 3 months, and then in October, if you have to close, we'll give you 6 months off." So that's fantastic. That helps me a lot. I don't have a landlord reading that, and I also have 2 tenants. One is a music school, and they've all been able to figure it out. But we can boot them out. They couldn't get it at least. But I've had that little bit of income. We have solar panels. We have 320 solar panels on the roof. We actually are making money on our solar panels this year because we're not using my electricity. Every month, our source owes me like $500. But the Sarah Stages Act is, what I'm trying to figure out is how do I keep my key people, and how do I, do. It's not about open. We can open, but can we open and not lose more money than if we were closed? That's our dilemma. It sounds like a weird thing, but it's true. You can't. Restaurants that say are open at 100%. They're not. You can every other booth 2 weeks ago. It's still every other booth. So there's all that kind of like people keep coming up to me saying, "Oh, you can open at 50% capacity." But we can't.
Most people aren't making money at 50% capacity.
No, and we could because we have 2 different. It's like this. We have 700 and we have 514 depending on tables or rows of chairs. So we can get creative. Artists will work for a little bit less, but I don't know a lot of people that want to put 12 people on a tour bus and go drive around the country.
Yeah,
That's just not happening. And when we have artists on our stage, we'll have 6 people on our stage. And we had 2 shows yesterday. We both sold out. It was fantastic. But we have these rules and they have these rules, and they came in and when they were on stage, we stayed inside, and then when they were done, we came out. And, it's that gets harder when you go inside. They brought an RV, they stayed in the RV, they didn't use our RVs and stuff. So.
Well, it's clear the most important thing to do is to address the coronavirus. That's what we really have to get rid of so that we can bring everything back. But those are the longer.
Yeah, barring that from happening right now.
Yeah.
It's true. We shouldn't. Honestly, it really angers me because we shouldn't even be sitting here right now. This venue should be 3/4 capacity. I should be 3/4 capacity. We should have, if someone comes in, if one of my staff gets sick, it should be contact tracing.
Exactly.
It's all out of control now. There's no way to really deal with it. But that's the conversation we should be having. But this is the conversation we're having, unfortunately.
It's for a different thing.
Yes.
I am celebrating my 30th year as a full-time performer, and I run a venue. So I have a pretty unique perspective because I've played in most of the rooms. I haven't played too well because I'm a one-man act, but I forget my attire. I came from 3 performances today in Franklin for a Parks and Rec program because they were the ones who were willing to hire me. I've been very fortunate in my life to be able to travel throughout the United States and play parts of Europe performing. When March rolled around, every booking through the end of the year disappeared, vanished from the schedule, with no real option for replacement. Our theater, which is a little 100-seat venue, and we sell about 7,500 seats every year on 3 nights a week. We went 4 months empty, and we reopened on July 24th with the appropriate accommodations that we could, exceeding the guidelines by requiring masks in the seats. And since we've opened, compared to the same period last year, we've seen an 87% reduction of people who are willing to come out and see shows. And that's based on we've had 17 performances, so we're not doing the 83 that Scott did, but we've had enough performances to get a sense of what people are willing to come out and see. So we're averaging about 15 tickets a show. And it's not because the content is not good, it's that there is a level of public confidence that is profoundly shaken, not just by the virus, but by the inconsistency and lack of information that they can feel confident in making basic decisions on whether it's safe to leave the house. So as much as I would love to say, I would love to have my venue open to 100%, it's not going to fill until people are confident. There are certain acts that, if I was having touring national acts, that might be a difference. People might come out to see a celebrity or a band that they've known or whatever. We're producing local programming from local providers. So we were actually well suited to reopen because we have a local talent pool. My biggest concern, and I can echo Scott, and in some ways I can echo Jordan, is that we're going to lose, we've already lost public confidence. And anything we can get our governor and the federal government to enhance public confidence by providing concrete information that's actionable is important. But even more importantly is to lose capacity. One of the things, not audience capacity, but the capability to do the jobs that Scott needs to have for the technicians, the lighting, the artists. One of the things that I've been arguing for the last 5 years is we don't invest enough in developing local culture and really focusing on that. And I think I'm really grateful from, Bank of New Hampshire Stage and Scott bringing people in who are local artists that are now getting a chance to really shine. My hope is that will continue, because that's our mission. I mean, we're not a not-for-profit, we're a little LLC. I haven't gotten a paycheck since April of 2016 doing that business. I've never taken it because the scale of the business is a cooperative exchange type of a thing, and we're not a not-for-profit. So when we're grateful for the funds we got about 17% of our ask compared to what other organizations got, which was much greater. But we also pay taxes, we have to pay for the overhead, we have to pay, our landlord did not give us they were closed. The mall was shut down for 2 months, more than 2 months, and they still expect to be paid back every penny. So
you're located in the mall?
We are at the mall, we have a separate entrance, but physically it's the same building. Although we do rent another space in the mall for rehearsals, and now with the mall curtailing hours, we have a venue that we can't use because we don't have access to the space when we need to use it. So part of that is about, the challenge there is that they're an away landlord. They're not New Hampshire based, they're New Jersey based, so there's nobody to really talk to. But, again, I think that part of it is, we would like to, part of me wants to stay closed because it makes, especially with stuff like demand pricing on electricity. For 3 months I was paying high demand pricing for a venue that was dark. We were shut, we had nothing on. And so that's a regulatory issue that could be accommodated for certain scales of organizations. But fundamentally for us, it really is about trying to get response from the government in a way and get support from whoever we can get it from that enable us to do what we need to do to ensure that audiences feel comfortable and secure in coming out, and that they're not going to get ill in our space. That fear, in some ways, drives what we do. I wish I had accurate information, but when we get mixed messages in the press about opening at 100%, which doesn't mean anything, because it's mixed messages to audiences, it makes it much more difficult. And frankly, we have thankfully not experienced this at Highlocks. I know other organizations have negativity towards their organizations, or if something happens. I know, like Tuckaway Tavern in Raymond, wonderful business. They had 1 case of coronavirus in their space, and the level of public fury that descended upon them was substantial. They also had some supporters, but how do you protect yourselves as an organization when there's no line in the sand, so to speak, and trying to define what is very beneficial for our business.
You know, your 13% is like the national average. A friend of mine is a professor of Texas government, and I was saying that he holds 15% is the comfort level for people. 15% of people will say that they'll decide to petition.
Although our survey was,
Right.
made us think there was a lot more confidence than there was.
Yes.
But again, that will depend, and it's, you don't know until you open. You don't know until you start putting the programming out there, and then it's a math thing, really. But I do appreciate, you taking the time, listening to us, and finding a way to engage.
Well, thank you, and believe me, I think we need a national plan for testing and contact tracing that we don't have, that would give people confidence. And
That's actually a great point. Seacoast Rep never really closed down. We just started live streaming when this all happened, with no audiences. We were the only ones doing it, so the audiences were great. And then even when we were the only ones doing it at the time, there were diminishing returns to know that everyone is now doing it. Like, it's almost not worth live streaming for us anymore. We did open up to audiences in July. We have 70 seats. That's our 30% capacity. So that's what allows for social distancing, which is 30%. All of our shows have been 6 people to 30 on a good night audiences. So we're not even close to even the 30% that we're open to. We did get the PPP, which would not have been able to stay open live stream without that. So we were incredibly grateful for that. We did apply for the EIDL in March, didn't get our application. We reapplied. We were denied because they could not substantiate our losses as we sit there looking at our bank account. It's our industry crumbling. So we went into appeal for that, and we call every week, and every week we call, they ask if we submitted our appeal and our paperwork, and we said, yes, we have. When your office got involved today, we were incredibly grateful because they proactively called us, and that is the first response, and we were so grateful for that, but we're still in appeal. We did not receive NERF because of we were not in good standing with the state of New Hampshire because our auditors had not submitted our financial statements, which was frustrating because we're unable to prepare them ourselves, and we have been putting a push on our auditors even before COVID. So we're in appeal for that. Because we haven't had any of these other relief, we are just, it's pretty dark and dismal not knowing, like, we are open, but we can't sustain it at these numbers. I did work on I was one of the co-founders of Pop-Up NH at the Bridge Street lot in Portsmouth. And I can tell you exactly what will happen to a community because I see it. It's a microcosm at that lot where there's 3 restaurant sheds, a beer garden. We're just adding retail and then a performance area. When there are no performances, that lot is at 30% capacity. And when a performance comes, that lot is at almost 100% capacity. And that is exactly what will happen to a community if the stages are gone. You will see all the restaurants, the retail, the hotels will take that same hit that lot does when there's no performances there. And we are, in Portsmouth alone, we contribute $58 million to the arts organizations to the local economy. And without the arts organizations, obviously the coronavirus is affecting everyone, but without us, it's definitely had an impact on tourism and what they're able to do right now too. So yeah, it's scary. Not knowing, we're trying to plan for next year. Our board is trying to make a decision on whether we should just take a break or not. Our staff does not want to for the same reasons. We cannot do that. We cannot shut down and rehire all these great people if we let them go. So planning for 2021 is nearly impossible because we don't know what we can plan for production-wise, what our capacity, what people's buying tendencies will be. We're $500 million in gift card liabilities. It's pretty scary just not having, but the testing, that's what brought me to speak up. So when we did, we thought we had a case of COVID coming to the building, but we found out through contact tracing after that it did not. But during that time, we didn't know. We had to cancel, shut down for 2 weeks and go through everything. And then just for peace of mind, we sent everyone to the rapid testing, which was $160 a test, and it cost us about $4,000 just to give our performers a peace of mind. So just even having the ability to get rapid testing for free would be like, that would be something that we would love to see happen quickly too.
Yes,
Yeah,
and it should have happened by now.
yeah, I, just to jump in, I think the rapid testing is something, I mean, even as we slowly bring things back, I mean, that's the thing you worry about is if something's gonna happen and you wanna be able to, you know, protect the people that are in your building and working there, more than anything. And so I have been hoping we could see that come. And I'll jump in just on the staffing part, because this is the part that I will tell you, having lived through the Great Recession where I had to lay off people, which was horrible. This came at me just so hard, and we employ a lot of people, and we had a staff of 22 permanent, full-time, part-time people. We had to, we have 10 working now, and so it's 12 people, and these are people with families and mortgages and all that, and they're professional people. They are our lighting people, our sound people, our stagehands, are those people that we had on regular staff. But then there's 22 other people that were our occasional people. They are the bartenders and the when we have a big show come in, they are the people that are the stagehands that come in, and they work all over this state, not just for our venue. And those are the people that I am most worried about now. Not right now because of the NERF, the 10 of us who've got jobs can keep our jobs and keep working, but those people, I kept their health insurance going until the end of our fiscal year, but at a certain point I had to let that go. And I don't know, without the $600, extra bump and all that, just kind of hold on to their world is something that really troubles me a great deal, because we are not in this world going to get those kinds of staff people back into our
Move on, go to some other state.
They'll have to, and we, we put on very complex, big shows. I mean, we need real technical knowledge when those 4 tractor trailers show up at our door, for the big Broadway shows or whatever. There's real talent there, and we had hired a person to work this building because of all the wonderful new technology that we had, and he's terrific, and I am terrified that he is going to go somewhere else before we can really get him back. But we have no work for him right now, and that triple whammy of we can't, because we're the bigger next sort of size organization, and similar to the Music Hall and the Colonial and the other bigger venues that bring in more than music acts, the theatrical acts and the things that are got a lot of production value. Our world is that those shows are not touring, but we are sitting with, I don't know how many contracts we're sitting with, 35, 40 contracts of people that should have come, and it's a very tricky business. They don't want to cancel, because then they don't get paid. So we've been just pushing things out into the future, and we're sitting with hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it's over $500,000 of advanced ticket sales that are on our books that we don't want to touch, and and that's why I'm so grateful for the size of NERF that we got, because we can keep that and not spend that money and pay our bills. But it all comes, unless we can start to ramp up when we get into 2021, and we get, because the capacity and the willingness of people to come out, that's the part that I think is really tough. And it's going to be slow. I just don't think people are going to come back on a dime. It's just not going to be the case. So how we manage, I'm not sure, because we're sitting with contracts that we're going to have to honor in some form or other, and these are all interesting negotiations. And then we've got the, whether we've been outside, paying to the Concord Community Music School has let us use their facility and their little stage outside on the park. And that's been great. So we've been able to keep our visibility, but we've only come inside once in this building, and we're starting to very slowly, but you've seen how many people we can sit. You can't, we can maybe break even and keep our visibility, but the big venue, And we're gonna do one show because we have a contract that only sold 300 tickets. It's the number we can put in there so we can test whether we can even do the protocols. But after that, we're sitting here because it's you know. So we rented out to a beauty pageant came in here to do a thing.
Yeah.
Terrifying, but they did it by the numbers and Steve got them through and in and out. So there are occasionally little community things that are coming our way. You know, we're doing a memorial service here tomorrow, you know, but it's not enough to keep going. It's just not. I mean, NERF, with the 10 people we've got on staff, we can get through, you know, I can see 2021 now. We can make it into there, but we're gonna have to fundraise with no shows, at least $350,000 to make up the rest to get through.
And the rest of the year?
Well, through the, starting.
Get through July 30th.
To get through next year, July 31st. But that still is assuming that we're gonna make 240,000 off our stage. And I don't know if that's gonna happen, but we're sitting with shows on our books, so we go, okay, at least some of them may happen in May, June, maybe. But then we go out every year. We usually go to, I don't even know what's gonna happen, but usually the way our business works is we go out in January to market in New York City. Everybody who has these performing arts centers comes to New York. And we all talk to the agents about what shows are going out, and then they start to put the tours together, and you win some, you lose some, you know, but you put a season together. And that's when you have to know that you've got dollars to put down, because they're gonna still want some guarantee. And I don't know how much we're not gonna be able to say, sorry, you know. And then it gets really, really dicey, because I have no way of knowing whether we're gonna be able to do that or not. And it is really scary. And when I think about, you know, our organization turned 25, we're supposed to be celebrating our 25th anniversary this fall. We're gonna put it off for a year because we just have to. But, you know, this place was built, the Capitol, I mean, the first building was built because a few people said, we're just not gonna let another historic, you know, venue be taken down and, you know, parking lot built in there and bring it back. And this community has developed and developed, and the whole downtown has come back because we've invested in this. And to think that this could all just go away, it just feels so sad. It just feels so sad because I know what we bring, and we bring that delight, we bring that moment where somebody is sitting in that theater going, oh my God, you know, you just have that kind of experience. And whether it's a rock band or a comic or a Broadway show, you know, it doesn't matter. It just brings life and meaning to people. So I thank you for being our warrior in Washington. And I think the entire New Hampshire congressional delegation deserves a lot of credit. You guys have been there.
The whole delegation, I think, has the same position on this.
Yeah, we feel your love, and that way we know that you care. And if we can do anything to, you know, help you, I know we'll be there, because I really hope Congress will go for a fourth package. I don't know if it will happen pre or after the election at this point, but it needs to very badly. And for us, I do want to also emphasize the need for the, you know, we will always, those of us in the nonprofit part, because we only make, on a good year, 70% off our stages and our events. The other is contributed revenue, which we need year after year after year to keep going. And so having those charitable deductions, it is a very big deal.
I'm actually optimistic that if we are able to put together a package, we are gonna get the charitable deduction, because that's got strong bipartisan support.
Yeah.
So I think there's a really good shot that that can happen.
Doesn't help Scott, but it definitely helps the nonprofit world.
And that gives 4,000 individual deduction.
Yeah.
Before taxes. So
yeah,
there's a big incentive there.
Yeah,
for individuals to do that.
Yeah.
Can I ask Jenny if you have anything you want to add before we open it up for the others?
Actually, I thank you so much, Senator, and thank you for being here with this group. And I'm hearing stories just like this from arts organizations, large and small, for-profit and nonprofit, all around the state. And the need really is extraordinary. and everybody seems to be in very similar circumstances. We have a very vibrant performing arts cohort here in New Hampshire. We also have community music schools, community art and dance schools, museums, the list goes on, and the need really is extraordinary. So we have been trying to communicate with both the for-profit and the nonprofit parts of the sector, and we just recently surveyed the nonprofit part of the sector regarding the NERF grants. And I think what was very interesting, about 143 arts and cultural organizations received grants through that program. And we heard from over 120 in our survey, and the outstanding need is still over $8 million. And the sector actually did very well in that program. Sector received over 25% of the total, which I think was a very, very good showing. And we're very grateful to those who stepped forward to support the arts sector in that process. We are going to be surveying the for-profit organizations, arts and cultural organizations that received Main Street funds, to get a sense of what their outstanding need is. But it really is extraordinary, and it goes across the board from small organizations to large, and every single discipline. And then, of course, we have individual artists. You heard from Jordan, and we're hearing from individual artists. We did some emergency grants to individual artists. We were only able to support 100 of them. But that need is also huge. And so, continuing the add-on for unemployment insurance for self-employed individuals, I think, is going to be key here until these individual artists can get back to work. So that's all I have to say. Anything else I say is just going to be echoing what you've already heard. But thank you again so much for being here and for doing this. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you all. Let me ask, are you hearing from associates in other states or other places around the country who, I assume everybody's pretty much in the same boat, but are you hearing from anybody who's got a good news story, who has ideas for what?
I was going to say, not a good news story. A woman I used to work with at Lebanon Opera House, Heather Clow, moved out to Ohio a few years back, and she's been running a 900-seat venue out there. Just had a conversation with her earlier in the week, last week, and they were finally given permission to reopen the venue, 15% capacity on a 900-seat theater. Just no way to make it happen. And that state has given no additional funding to the arts. So she's in a pretty tight predicament. And I fear, quite a few spots around the country are very similar. I think New Hampshire has been fortunate. The NERF money on the nonprofit side, the Main Street money on the for-profit side, been fantastic. Doesn't fulfill the whole need. And I just want to jump in on Scott's comment about staff. That is fundamentally the place where once we can reopen, it won't be any good to us if it's a year from now and we've lost all of that knowledge. Rebuilding it, you might as well consider it as a brand new startup at that point. And that's really tough to take. We've developed our staff over a number of years, and they're committed to us, we're committed to them, but we were unable to retain them for several months now, and it's just heartbreaking. So
I think I've seen from the New England Foundation for the Arts side, as a performer who travels, I've seen a huge migration of performers who have such uncertainty about their future that they're migrating into other careers completely unrelated to it. And ones that are stable. And I mean, a lot of them have been content. I love tech. I spent a lot of my downtime getting certifications on lighting equipment, with no understanding that there's going to be any opportunity to really use those talents. And so it's much easier to migrate into network administration in a corporation that still has funding and doesn't look like they saw that big of a dip. The only other thing that I'd like to advocate for today is for some of the other for-profits and not-for-profits who either were not eligible for funding because of their size or when they started business. I know couple from the seacoast who signed a lease for a year on a property to develop a performing arts venue with a school attached to it. It was a small for-profit that they were looking to do public-private partnership with other not-for-profits in the area. And they weren't able to really open, but they're now on the hook for liabilities that they can't pay out.
Yeah.
And they weren't eligible for any funding because they weren't either, whether the unemployment, not having revenue for their business, or whether they just could not, because they were not open for a full year. That we have a lot of people, and we're very fortunate, I think, in this state, we have a lot of self-starters, a lot of people who, they hitch up their pants and they say, I'm gonna fund this by hook or by crook. And that generally works until it doesn't. And it didn't spectacularly. And there was no net for them, no net whatsoever. And the hope is that at some point there's some way to be able to provide, because otherwise those folks are gonna lose their homes. They're gonna have to move to other locations because they can't afford to live here. And that's the one other part of it that, I'm going to argue until the cows come home. Affordable housing in this state for young people, new career folks is a nightmare. Like, people can't afford to live here.
Affordable housing was an issue before.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Huge issue.
But we're seeing such a strong amount of investment right now from people who are buying in the seacoast that have never even entered our state. They're buying property on pure speculation because they can get it at a decent price point, and they can afford to balance it. And it's seeing a degradation of neighborhoods. It's seeing a net impact that's going to have. I know I've had the pleasure and curse of seeing Portsmouth change over the years, do really well in some ways, but see a lot of things go by the wayside, and it's getting increasingly more difficult for any arts organization to be able to justify staying open on the seacoast. And that's, again, we can't solve that right now, but it is another factor that comes into play.
Well, certainly the cost of living and housing is a big aspect of that, and I can tell you everywhere I've been in New Hampshire, whether it's the Lakes region, the North Country of Colebrook, Peterborough, I was over in the western part of the state last week, and everybody's saying the same thing, that they're seeing people come in from out of state and trying to buy a property. So yes, it's a huge impact, and it's one that I'm not sure how we address, frankly, Tim.
I'm just sitting here listening to all of this, and the federal funding that was made available has kept a lot of organizations going. Very grateful for that. And I know that there's a need for another round, but listening to all that's been discussed, it seems that we have unsustainable business models with these limitations. So I guess my question is, from someone who's inside the Beltway, what do you hear about the likelihood of vaccine becoming available in the not too distant future? Because it seems to me we can't sustain this round and round after round of federal funding. At some point, we have to be able to have business models that actually work.
Well, two things. First of all, I'm sure I don't know any more. I don't have any inside information on the vaccine. I don't know any more than you all do. When you saw that the head of the FDA, Dr. Hahn, said that you might allow a vaccine to be on the market without third stage trials. I think that's not clear. It's not yet clear if we're actually going to have a vaccine that is going to meet the effectiveness rate. But everybody, the experts that I heard from in DC, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, the task force, all suggested that we're looking at sometime next spring. So spring of 2021 at the earliest to get a vaccine that's really going to have some impact. And of course, one of the challenges is getting that vaccine out to people who need it. We have Smith's Medical over in Keene is providing syringes for the federal government to try and make sure that they have the syringes to actually do the vaccine once we get it in place, but it's not clear. They haven't released the list of who's going to qualify and what the priority is for that. So that's one challenge. The other challenge, though, is how sustainable is this? Every economist I talked to, everyone who has come before the Senate has said that the most important thing we can do right now is try and sustain the economy, try and help people who are hurting, try and help organizations, businesses get through this period. That when concerns are raised about the fiscal impact, which I share, their point is we don't want to start dealing with the debt until we have an economy that's moving again. And if we look at the Great Depression and what happened after the stock market crash in the late 20s, it was we took the wrong approach in not investing in the economy until Roosevelt got elected. And it's the same issue we saw with the financial meltdown in 2008. What brought things back was investing in the economy. And so while I don't think we can do that indefinitely, I think we're going to need another round to help people get through the rest of this year. And so my hope is that we can get some agreement on that. It's been challenging, as I said, because not just around what goes in it, but just the need. It took a long time, I think, for Majority Leader McConnell to recognize that there was a need to actually do something. The thinking was, well, we put all this money out there, let's see how it works. Well, it did work to some extent. And that's why unemployment is not any higher than it is. That's why many of you and many of our small businesses were able to get through a period of time. But now we're at the end of that, and we got to provide some additional help. And that's my goal. And as we look at some of the areas where I believe it's most important to help, one is state and local governments. The reason New Hampshire had the $1.25 billion is because we held out and said, we got to have help for state and local governments, or we're not going to support something. And that continues to be my position. I think it's really important because they're on the front lines, and fortunately in New Hampshire, I think the state has done a good job of dividing that money and listening to input from stakeholders. We also need money for testing and contact tracing. I was up in Hanover at Dartmouth on Thursday, and one of the things they were talking about is the need to have an in-home test so that we can all test before, which is the instant results. So we can test before we leave our homes, know if we're positive or not. And when we can get that, that will provide some reassurance to people that they can go out, that they know the person sitting next to them is going to be okay. And we're not there yet, but that's in development. So I think there are a number of things that we've got to do in this next package of assistance. And one is, I think we need to continue to support small businesses, and that includes our entertainment venues. And so we will be working on that. And if there are associations like any other arts councils, other state associations, if you all are dealing with folks in other states and can encourage the people you're dealing with to talk to their elected members of Congress and urge them to support getting something done again to help anything. I think this is one of those times when the grassroots is really important.
Lisa has a question, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I do. I want to ask Scott. He had mentioned that tax deductions would not be helpful, but there was something that would be helpful. What was that? I didn't quite hear it.
I'm a big believer in the Save Our Stages Act and the restart. There was something about a tax deduction for payroll and something that helps me in April for something that most people don't have payroll isn't going to help us. The Save Our Stages takes a whole bunch of people in the industry and helps them. It's not just for the venue owners and the venues, it's for the lighting director, it's for everybody. It helps everybody flow through this. That's why I like that act.
And about grants.
Right.
Grants. Okay. And I wanted to ask Senator Shaheen, is there a sense of when, of course, that's the big question everyone wants to know is when the next package might come. I know that you're waiting to form agreements, but I'm just curious if could the package potentially be held up because there's, I don't know how large the package is. Is it also including, say, money for the post office or anything that could affect even, I don't know if there could be money in the future for drop boxes for elections as this becomes, as it becomes more aware that perhaps the Postal Service isn't the most reliable system at the moment for voting by ballot.
Well, that's part of the debate, Lisa. In terms of timing, I thought we would have an agreement before they sent the Senate help for August. I thought we were gonna stay there until we got an agreement. There's a disagreement over how much money the package should be worth, and a disagreement over what gets included in that. When we passed the CARES Act back in March, there was help for the Postal Service, although it does not prove very helpful, but there was an effort to help it. There was funding, $400 million to help states with election security. That's another issue that continues to be on the list of disagreements right now in terms of negotiations. There are disagreements around whether state and local governments are going to get additional help, whether schools are going to get help, and what that help is going to look like. And then around testing and contact tracing. Because as I think, listening to all of you, I think you agree with me that until we get the coronavirus under control, we're not going to get back to where we all want to be. And the most important thing we can do there is look at what works in terms of getting the virus under control and what's worked in other countries. There's a reason why the United States is not doing as well as the other industrialized nations. It's because we haven't put in place those measures, those consistent measures, that will allow us to get the virus under control. So that is also a stumbling block in terms of the negotiations. So I'm hopeful that we can get something done in September, because I think we've got a lot of people who, whether it's small business owners or people who are looking at the moratorium on evictions ending, and they're worried about getting evicted from their apartments or paying their rent or whatever. We've got a lot of people who need help, and so we really need to see some bipartisan action, I think, in Washington.
Senator, I'm sorry to interrupt. We need to get you out and schedule for a call in 10 minutes.
All right.
So thank you.
Michelle's giving me the last word. Normally I can go in front of her really quick.
Can't do it from behind. I was watching you going, oh, thank you so much, Senator,
Thank
for
you all.
coming. Really, so grateful.
To share your concerns. And again, if there's something that comes up you think we should be aware of, you have an idea you think we should know about, let Michelle know. Call our office. We will follow up on that.
Yeah, I would suggest keeping your office connected to what Americans for the Arts is doing, because they really have the network of state arts advocacy network, which is called SAN. So there is a whole network, and I pay attention a lot to that. And we have an organization here. We've actually collectively gotten more organized and are working now through Arts for New Hampshire, which is part of that whole network. So we are trying to pay attention to what's happening in other states. And we are so fortunate, again, to have the delegation that we have, because I know some of my colleagues fight very hard to even get a chance to speak to a senator. So thank you very much.
Yeah. It's one of the benefits we have of living in a state like New Hampshire.
Yeah, exactly.
We all know it.
Yes.
Appreciate the time.
Isn't it now?
It got a little chilly.